of Northcom, publicly being dissolved right now into regular Army, is confiscating guns in Illinois statewide.
Trying to find me.
The minute your
Standing in the middle of life with my pants
state registration expires, even a day, you got to have a card to even own guns, they SWAT team you with the Army. So that's a beta test. New Orleans was a beta test. Going into the nice neighborhoods, high and dry, slamming people's heads in the concrete, taking their guns. See, now it's going to be nationwide. Hello, U.S. Army here, ma'am, doing a courtesy check. We'd like to inspect your firearms. Those are in areas where you have a Second Amendment, like Dallas, Texas. It's the police doing it. It's in mainstream news that the military, regular Army, will be working with your local police. High treason, the destruction of the Republic in your face, but the public can't even find the U.S. on a map. So how are they going to be able to know then that that's tyranny? Somehow we've got to stop this. I mean, this is just so bold. I'm going to cover it next hour. Great article by Paul Watson up on prisonplanet.com. Paul, you posted some videos from Police State 2000 of troops coming up and telling cameramen to turn their cameras off, of practicing taking over the police stations and city halls and things. Will you add the video of them confiscating guns?
Yes.
And then people don't believe it. Why don't you add the article from like 3 months ago where the governor of Illinois announced they're going to use Army to confiscate guns?
Well, they're just here to help, Alex.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it doesn't matter if it's on national TV. Still doesn't exist.
No, it does. I mean, when we reported that the preachers and the pastors were being trained to pacify their congregation to not resist when martial law's implemented, you know, they all came out and said we were making it up. And then all the local TV news stations reported it, and then they said, well, it might be true, but there's nothing to worry about. And still to this day, 2 years after all the local TV stations reported it on it, it's still listed on museumofhoaxes.com, one of these urban myth websites, as a likely hoax.
And now they're going to have Mythbusters do a 2-hour special on 9/11 Truth. They're having the National Geographic Channel, and they'll just get up there and lie, just like Museum of Hoaxes says we're lying. I mean, imagine what it's like to get secret FEMA documents and then to make calls to local preachers I know and to say, how do you know about this? Yes, they came to me, but I refused. I know a local pastor of a large Baptist church. And to then talk to a deacon of another church, and I was sent all this, and then I had the pastor on the show, and then FEMA came and threatened him, somehow tracked back. I mean, these were FEMA documents with names and phone numbers, folks. I have to sleep at night with this stuff, and the debunkers just lie and say we're making it up, Paul. I mean,
this website said, quote, tellingly, the article doesn't provide any verifiable source for its claims, even though the whole document was linked in the article. And then all the comments below are, there's the source, and then here it is on local TV news, and it's just, they don't change any of this stuff.
They don't care. Hey, don't you little hired punks know something? Don't you understand that tyranny isn't cute? You're not going to be part of the winning team. The New World Order is going to bankrupt you, too.
Well, Alex, what this is being sold on the pretext of is that the troops are just here to help in, times of emergency if there's a disaster.
They said in the Army Times that's going to be used for riot control and suppressing the people and helping at car wrecks. Well, what's wrong with the Army? They just life-flighted a little girl, you bastard.
Well, look at what happened in Katrina. They weren't much help there, were they?
Well, I just, let me tell all the yuppies and all the idiots something right now. Folks, when governments bring troops in and point them at the government, that's who they're really menacing, bad things happen, okay? This is so they can rape the daylights out of you. We'll be right back. Stay there, Paul. 6 weeks ago, the Army and Northcom announced they're going to deploy a brigade of combat-hardened troops for warfare against the American people. It states it clearly. That was 3,000 troops. Now they're announcing 20,000 for starters. I've been studying this. It looks like it's going to be at least 50,000 regularly stationed troops, and then, according to Obama, 1 million kind of like glorified security cops or community police like they have in England, where they come up and ask you questions, train you to be asked questions every day, harassed, train you to interact with the police constantly, to be asked questions. They now do this all over England. If you're in a park, just sitting there, they walk up and ask if you're a terrorist. They ask if you're a pedophile. It's just all social conditioning, and it's all being announced. Paul Watson, in closing here, we'll have more reports out on PrisonPlanet.com about what really happened in India, in Mumbai. It's got all the earmarks of a staged event, classical staged event. This is Obama's crises. We said it would be in Pakistan and India. Here it is. But just on the subject of this article you wrote that's from the Washington Post, 20,000 more troops to be deployed for domestic security. Now how this works is they announced one brigade 5 weeks ago, and then in the article it really listed 3 brigades and a bunch of other units, or around 15,000 troops. Now they're announcing 20,000. You watch, it'll be 50,000 within a year, and you will see them. They're going to be everywhere. Again, just standing around doing nothing with machine guns. Then they'll come over with police, ask you questions. It'll be on the news, people being questioned. I mean, going back 6-7 years ago at sporting events, high school games, they'll just have the Army there searching people in Tennessee and in Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, in Montana. It's just training you to be a slave. Line up, slave. Show me your papers. Little kids with their parents having their bags searched, training them to be a slave. The public schools are training them how to be prisoners. Paul Watson, closing comments on this.
Well, that's right, Alex. I mean, look at what they did in Katrina. They weren't helping anyone. They were shooting alleged looters. They were shoving people around sports stadiums, making pointless patrols on deserted streets. And in fact, the local politicians were using them as an armed escort to go back to their houses, which weren't even badly flooded, to rescue their possessions.
While cops stood down and let their family members, mothers and people in nursing homes die over 5 days.
Yeah, that's what they were used for. I mean, they deliberately botched the relief efforts for Katrina, then waited a week to provide the pretext for troops to come in. I mean, FEMA were preventing the trucks full of food, medicine, and water from getting through, and they, as we reported at the time, they cut the communication lines. So they needed.
The police had armed standoffs with FEMA paramilitary police climbing fences in the dead of night. This is after the hurricane hit, but before things even broke down, cutting all the lines. That's why the police all walked off the job. FEMA hit them and hit them hard with military precision.
So it created the pretext to say we need the troops there, even though the local authorities could have dealt with it if they hadn't been sabotaged.
Again, FEMA secretly at over 50 locations, cutting power to police departments and fire departments and local emergency, and with fire axes hacking down the police communication towers.
Right, and this new deployment that's been in the Washington Post today, as we've reported, it's all codified under the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, which was repealed, but then Bush attached a signing statement to it saying, he didn't feel bound by the repeal. So the question is, Obama has said he will reverse all these Bush signing statements. Will the John Warner Defense Authorization Act be one of them? With his actions on, Gates and Hillary Clinton, it seems doubtful.
Yeah, we should do a story about all of his wicked appointments now. I can't wait to ask Tarpley about his savior Hillary being appointed Secretary of State. We're moving to have her confirmed. We should do a story explaining the fact that he isn't going to reverse anything real. Paul Watson, I really appreciate your great work. Everybody should go get your story at PrisonPlanet.com right now. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alex.
There he goes.